Hi guys, welcome back. This is Sheena, and listen, I really wanted to shout out the person that put a couple scriptures in one of my former videos because honestly, yes, this story that we're about to talk about today is going to serve as a great foundational illustration for everything that we're about to talk about. Whether you are religious or not, I would encourage you to stick around. Let's just take the principle from this story because again, it's just going to work for everything else we're going to talk about, I believe. So I really just want to start in Genesis 3, and this is going to be the main talking points that I want to pull from. By this time, we already have Adam and Eve. God created Eve to be a helpmeet of Adam, and we can understand from that point that unity, togetherness, and harmony was part of the original plan, whether you believe in marriage or not, right? Like, let's just operate from this fashion that unity and harmony between man and woman was to be part of the original plan. They were told to be fruitful and multiply and replenish and subdue. So they were given essentially dominion over everything, and they were supposed to work the land. God put them in the Garden of Eden and told them that they can eat from any of the trees besides this one tree, which was the knowledge of good and evil. If they ate from this tree, they would die. Okay, so now we're in Genesis 3. And it starts off by saying that the serpent was the most craftiest of all the beasts that the Lord created. That word crafty. I love it because it just gives you that vibration of being slick, underhanded. It's not a good word, but it just really helps you to feel the undertone of the deception and the low-keyedness. I know I just made up a word, but y'all get what I'm saying. So the serpent was very crafty. So he comes up to Eve and he says, so God said you couldn't eat from any of the trees, right? Notice the way he framed that question. He kind of overcompensated for the original instruction that God gave them. It's like that person when they come to you and they ask you a question and you could just feel that it has ulterior motives in it. Just from the way that they say it, it feels slick, it feels grimy. Okay, so that's what I picked up on when I read this again. And Eve says, oh, no, God didn't say that, God didn't say that. He said that we can't eat from it or we can't touch it or we would die. So God actually never said anything about touching it. Eve just kind of added her own little thing right there, okay? And the serpent says, oh, girl, you're not gonna die. God just knows that if you eat from this tree, your eyes are going to be open and you're going to become like gods and you'll know the difference between good and evil. And the Bible goes on to say that Eve looks at the tree. She saw that it was good for food and she took the fruit and it looked good. And so she took it and she ate of it. And then she gave it to our boy Adam. And then he also took it. And their eyes were immediately open. Okay, we fast forward. They hear God's voice in the cool of the day, and they run and they hide. Okay, and I want to make sure I'm chronicling this correct, so forgive me for looking down. So, and they hid themselves from God. And God calls to Adam and says, where are you? And basically Adam says, I was afraid and I hid myself. And he tells God that he was naked. I'm going to say that for YouTube. And God says, wait a minute, who told you that you were naked? Right? Because when God put them in Eden, they were without clothes and they were unashamed. Okay? And Adam said, God, it's this woman that you gave me. Okay? Okay? So then God goes to Eve and says, like, what's up here? And Eve says, oh, no. It was the serpent. The serpent beguiled me and then I did eat of the fruit, okay? And I want to just stop right there from this small passage of scripture to just illustrate a few points that will serve as a basis for later. The first thing is, as I'm researching, it seems that we kind of got off course as a people from things that looked good, things that seemed harmless, things that presented themselves in ways that would be of assistance to us. But over time, we have seen that it's been a great detriment to our community. We can argue about that later, but I just want to lead with that. So it says the fruit, Eve saw the fruit and it looked great, but Eve made a bad judgment call. And once she made the bad judgment call, not only did she take it on, but she then gives it to Adam, her mate. She's supposed to be serving as a helpmeet. She gives it to Adam, and then it also affects Adam. Okay? So that's one of the first points that I wanted to really look at. The second point is, whenever God came to Adam and Eve, and he asked them, like, who told you that it was anything wrong with you not having clothes on? That was all a part of the original design. So what made you think that what I told you was the incorrect way of doing things, right? And I've already seen it in the comments and this blame cycle that we do as Black men and Black women. Again, Adam goes to blame Eve. Eve blames the serpent. And does that not sound like exactly what we see online on a daily basis? We have Black men over here saying, well, the Black woman is masculine, and all these women, they just want you to go out and spend all this money, right? And then you have the woman pointing fingers at the man. All these Black men don't have jobs, and they just don't know how to, listen. And I'm not saying that what's being said on either side isn't warranted, but when do we ever sit, again, from a place of just being willing to understand instead of being understood, instead of always being the first to want to get in the mirror and, I don't know, just see whose trauma is the loudest? It doesn't help. We all know that we are coming from generational trauma. And yes, we are not just looking back at slavery and using it as an excuse for every single thing. But because of that institution and the I hate to use the word toxic because it's so overused that it almost loses its oomph, you know what I mean? But because of those things that were passed down, obviously we're not in chattel slavery anymore. We don't have physical slavery, but there were certain thoughts and ideas that have been passed down to us that have kept us, some would argue, in chains mentally, which is just as bad as physical slavery. So the blaming is another point, right? And we're going to see this continually throughout the rest of these chats. But I guess that's my overarching theme for today is, did we allow things to come in and disrupt the unity that we needed? I was doing some research and it said that even there were times in slavery where after that period ended, Black men and Black women rushed to be married. They did so in a fashion so much that the place where they were going were overwhelmed because the family unit was so strong and was so needed. And after being fractured from slavery, they, I guess they really prized the togetherness and the harmony. So I'm getting a little long here. I don't want to make this past 10 minutes. I want to keep this bite-sized. So I hope that I've kind of packaged this in a way that can kind of just set a foundation. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments from anything that we went over today. You guys have been so amazing down in the comments, and I truly value the feedback. It helps me to fine tune and to, again, the commenters, the person that commented gave me this and this kind of restructured how I was going to roll this out. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.